There isn't a single person or a single dental practice or a single home that doesn't encounter problems. But the difference between being successful and not is not whether you have problems or not. Of course, we all have problems. The difference lies in the ability to face those problems and to work through them to find a healthy solution that brings resolution to the people or to the business or to whatever is going on. So problem solving, remember I think the key word there is solving, because that's going to be the goal always, finding a healthy, equitable solution to something that might be causing some difficulty.
I think that's so true, because many times when things go awry or they don't line up, we get into this habit of blaming, yes. And sometimes even blaming and shaming. Welcome to another episode of The Irreplaceable Dental Assistant, powered by D.A.M.E, Dental Assisting Made Easy. Do I have a treat for you today? I have my friend, my sister, my mentor, Dr. Cathy Jameson. Welcome, Cathy.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lawson-Myers. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thrilled. Love doing anything with you and for your people, for your wonderful assistants. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, we are grateful to have you. I know so much about you, but could you just share a little bit about Dr. Cathy Jameson, who she is, what she brings to the world?
Thank you. I'd be happy to. I've been in dentistry for a long, long time. My husband is a dentist, and he and I were married in undergraduate school at Oklahoma State University. And then I was behind him in school. And so off he goes. He gets accepted to dental school and off he goes to dental school. So we married and I went with him, finished my bachelor's degree in education in Omaha, Nebraska. He was in school at Creighton University, a private dental school. Had a great dental school experience. Difficult, as you know, how difficult that is, but we really bonded during that time. And I'm so grateful that I had a chance to see what it was like firsthand for someone to go through dental school and earn that very coveted degree. I think it helped me respect who he is and what he does and what all the people in the dental profession are engaged doing every day for themselves, but mostly for patients. So I taught school to put him through dental school. Then I went on to get a master's and a PhD in psychology because I was working in his dental practice. I helped him start his practice. I assisted him some, worked mostly in the business office, and learned very quickly that the science of human behavior, which is psychology, is critical to whether we're talking about patients or our team or doctors or whatever it is. The science of human behavior is imperative. Then I went on some years later to get a second PhD in management because that's what I do now and have for some time. Started a company called Jameson Management. And when we learned that for John to be successful in his practice, the management was critical, but he didn't get much management, if any, management training in dental school. So we had to figure it out. So we figured it out and found that we were very successful. And people started asking me, well, could you come and teach us what you're doing in John's practice? And I thought, well, I'm a teacher. I guess I could teach this. And that was actually the beginning of Jameson Management. Now we have consultants throughout the United States, and we've had consultants throughout the world, really. We have been in every state in the United States and have had the privilege of working in 31 countries. So we have a lot of experience. We love dentistry. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I have 4 grandkids, actually, and my husband and I live on a ranch in Oklahoma. So it's a very, it's a demanding life, but a life we love, and we love our profession of dentistry.
Well, you know, when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work because you're motivated to do it each day just a little better. And I've seen that in you, Dr. Jameson. I truly have. So I wanted to drill down and speak to you today about a topic that really makes a difference if you have been able to manage it or not in a dental office, but it's seldom spoken about. This topic is problem solving.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
And I know you're the expert because you have a wonderful book that I've read. And I found this chapter and I reached out and I said, hey, we have got to share this.
Good for you. Well, that's wise on your part, because I think you and I can both agree, and everyone listening, all of your wonderful assistants who are listening, there isn't a single person or a single dental practice or a single home that doesn't encounter problems. But the difference between being successful and not is not whether you have problems or not. Of course, we all have problems. The difference lies in the ability to face those problems and to work through them to find a healthy solution that brings resolution to the people or to the business or to whatever is going on. So problem solving, remember I think the key word there is solving, because that's going to be the goal always, finding a healthy, equitable solution to something that might be causing some difficulty.
I think that's so true, because many times when things go awry or they don't line up, we get into this habit of blaming,
Yes.
and sometimes even blaming and shaming. Let us know, how do you define the word problem? What does it mean when I say there's a problem?
Now, good for you, because probably when you said that word or when I said that word, for all the people that are listening, it may have meant something different, because each of us have our own perception based on our own experience, our own life experience. Your experience is different than mine. Mine is different than yours. And therefore, how we define something can be different. There's nothing wrong with that. But for the subject to be discussed today, let's get clarity. I'd like to, if I may, I'd like to refer to the chapter 21 in my book, Creating a Healthy Work Environment, which I'm really committed to that. We all work, 8 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, or maybe more. And so if we're going to work, we might as well enjoy it, love it, and have it be healthy, a healthy part of a fulfilled life. So with that, let's define problem. I'm going to give you 2 definitions, if I may. The first one is from Webster. It's a classic definition from Webster. And here's what Webster says, very traditional. Says that a problem is something that is difficult to deal with, something that is a source of trouble or worry, etc. Difficulty in understanding something. So there's a difference there. It can be something that's causing a problem, or this suggests that it can be just that we aren't on the same wavelength. We don't understand something, and that can be problematic. It can either be, I don't understand how somebody is responding to something, I don't understand someone's attitude towards something, or I don't understand how to do something in the practice, which can all lead to difficulty. And last but not least, Webster says that a problem is a feeling of not liking or wanting to do something. Now, that's a pretty difficult one. If somebody doesn't want to do something, doesn't like to do something, as leaders, it's hard to get somebody to do that and do that well. So that itself is probably a subject into itself. I like a definition of problem from the Free Dictionary. The Free Dictionary has a very constructive view of or look at this word called problem. And this dictionary says a problem is a question to be considered, solved, or answered. And I love that. I think it's a very affirmative way to define problem, because they're not just talking about the situation, they're talking about getting through it, working through it, being better on the other side. To be considered, in other words, we got to think about it and figure out what it is. Then our goal is solution, as I mentioned at the outset, and or this, whatever the question may be, whatever the situation may be, let's answer it. So again, I think the key word here for us to think about is resolution. Sometimes when people hear about, I've got a problem, we put up barriers, we get defensive, we get nervous, we want to back away. And that doesn't do any good. Again, I'm going to say what I said earlier. The difference between being successful and not successful with most any situation, certainly with dealing with a problem, is the ability and willingness, and I'm going to use the word strength, to face that problem and work through it, knowing that we're going to work through it. We're going to work on this until we get a solution that's good for all parties. Now, the other thing that you said, Heather, that I'd really like to piggyback on is the word blame. You're very correct. Oftentimes, something isn't going right in the practice. We may not really have taken the time to figure out what's what's going right or what's going wrong. We just think something's going wrong, so it must be her. It must be them. It must be the doctor. Someone's doing something wrong, and let's get together in the sterilization room and talk about it. Because surely it's not me. It's not me that does anything wrong. It's got to be someone else. So, all the conversations that go on in the sterilization room. And so they blame, well, it's not me. Heather isn't doing what she's supposed to do. This isn't, we're always running behind schedule. It's because Jan in the business office doesn't know anything about scheduling. She's just doing a terrible job, blah, 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 blah. And so we just reach out instead of looking at the problem with the goal of saying, hey, let's get to the core of this. Let's dig deep. Let's find out what's going on. Does everybody agree we have a problem here? We run behind 3 out of every 4 appointments. Would we call that a problem? Let's all agree that it is. Then let's find out what's causing it and let's work through it. So this thing called blame gets us nowhere. Blaming is absolutely useless. In fact, in the world of psychology, in the world of organizational psychology, blame is considered a toxic, and I'm going to use that word because that's the word that's used, it's considered a toxic behavior in a business. In our case, in a dental practice, toxic behavior. Because number one, we're only putting someone down. We're only reaching out in a hurtful way. There's no solution going to be had. And we run the risk of antagonizing any other parties that might join with us to solve a problem. So it's absolutely, there's no benefit. And in fact, I'm going to use the word again, it's toxic. So I'm going to suggest to all of our good listeners, when you start to reach out and blame someone else for something, stop before you do that and realize, is it this person that's wrong, or is there something going on that is less than effective? Heather, oftentimes I say, and I believe this with all my heart, and I've had lots of experience with this, almost every time I find, or that we find, that people are at odds with each other in a practice, whether it's the clinical team being at odds with the business team or vice versa, or the hygienist being at odds with the clinical assistants, or 2 people, you and I, if we're at odds with one another and we're having problems. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, if you look carefully, if you peel the layers of the onion, so to speak, to get to the core of what's going on, it's not that I get up in the morning and think, I'm going to go to work and make Heather miserable. I'm going to see how miserable I can make her. I don't like her. I know I sound like Pollyanna, but I just don't believe that's true. I don't believe people get up in the morning with the purpose, with the goal of having a miserable day and making everybody else miserable. Now, I just don't believe that. I'd like to not believe that. So, but that's what happens. And that is so ineffective. So what we need to find out is it's not the person maybe that's doing something wrong, but there may be a glitch in the system. And I find out if there's a glitch in one of the management systems, or more than one of the management systems, that will inadvertently pit one person against another, or it will inadvertently pit a whole division of the practice or department of the practice against another. I'll go back to the scheduling issue. Let's say that the team, let's pretend that the practice is continuing to run behind schedule. That's very stressful. Patients don't like it. Doctors don't like it. Teams don't like it. Nobody likes that. And they were always hurrying, and that adds extra stress. It's just one stress added to another. So we don't want to run behind schedule. So we start throwing daggers at those business people. They don't know how to schedule. Or the business people might say, we scheduled just the way they told us, and then they throw in all this extra stuff, and they're not doing what they're supposed to. Blah, blah, blah. Blame, 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 blame. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? And it doesn't get anybody anywhere. So again, there probably is a glitch in the scheduling system. And if we find out what that glitch is and put our heads together or get some help, more than likely we can find a solution. And that's really the answer. Einstein says, stop talking about your problems and start thinking about solutions. Well, that's a good way to think about it. Stop talking about your problems and start thinking about solutions. So there's a long answer to your question about the definition of problem.
It was well worth listening to, because you hit the nail on the head on so many instances. in the dental office, we don't have the water cooler, but we do have the sterilization room.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm pretty sure a few of my listeners are going, yep.
Yeah. We
But
all know
Cathy,
what we're talking about.
who is at liberty to identify or to say there's a problem? Because a lot of times people feel that they see something going awry, but it's not their job. They're not, they don't have the authority to say that there's a problem. So who do you think is able to identify a problem in the dental office without stepping out of bounds?
Right. It's a very good question. So I'm going to give you the idealistic answer. As we develop our team in a practice, as you, my husband, John, anybody works on developing the team, what we want to do is empower the people. That sounds like a cliche word, but it's really not. Empowerment means to give someone authority or power or permission, if you will, to do something. And that includes identifying a problem. For example, there may be, let's say the person in the business office is having problems with people paying. Okay, well, the doctor may not know that. The doctor's back in the clinical area treating patients. The doctor may not know exactly what's going on in the business office. We hope that you have good systems there and that we can count on people to be administering those systems. But if there's problems, then that person who is facing that problem and seeing that, we want them to bring up the issue. We want them to bring up the subject. We want to know, because otherwise we don't have even a chance to solve the problem. If we never know what the problem is, we never have a chance to solve it. And so, in my opinion, if anyone in the practice sees a glitch in a system, let's call it that, a problem, or sees a glitch in a system, I would hope that they have been empowered by the owner doctor or manager, if the practice is set up in that scenario, to say, I see a problem that we have. Again, without blame, to say, I'd like to bring this up at the next team meeting. We're running behind schedule about 3 out of 4 patients or appointments, and I'd like to bring that up to decide what's happening, and then let's schedule a time to work on a solution. When we do provide empowerment to people and we give them the strength, the permission, the authority, as you said, it makes them stronger. They become more confident, if you will. If you were going to look at the word, empower, you think about the synonyms: authorize, entitle, permit. People want to know that they have permission to bring up an issue, and then encouraged. Now, that may sound like a dichotomy. It's not. I want to encourage people to bring up issues because I can't see it all. And if I really have a team built on trust, then I know that nobody's going to bring up a problem because they want to belittle someone else. They don't want to cause more problems. What they're doing is something that will help solidify the practice, make it better, help us to serve our patients more effectively, and help all of us have less stress. So if we really trust and respect one another in a team that's in a practice, in a team that's oriented toward that and that's nurtured, then everyone has, I would say, not only permission, but I would say the right, and I would suggest the responsibility to bring up issues to make the practice better.
I think you're so right, because everybody is looking at the same animal from a different point of view, and everybody has a different viewpoint that drills you down into things that are working very well, or things that you're seeing consistently not going well from your viewpoint. And waiting on somebody else who's not privy to what you're seeing may be dismal. It may stress you out. It may make you feel overwhelmed, because, as you say, nobody wants to be in an environment that is stressful, where you see things going wrong and you don't feel empowered to do anything about it. So I think this topic of problem solving is crucial. And based on what I've heard you say, anyone can take the initiative to say,
yes,
we have this. how can we fix it? And that basically is how you would define problem solving, identifying the problem, and then being able to sit and flesh it apart to determine what has gone wrong. And as you've said, it doesn't necessarily have to come from the top. It just has to be an environment in which people feel free to bring their wins, but also to identify challenges.
How I bring that up, my communication skills about that also make a big difference. That's where you've got to be careful not to use blaming words. You want to stay away from statements, what we call you statements. Heather, you don't ever schedule us properly. You don't seem to know what we're doing back here at the back, and you're trying to cram things in, and you're running around us around like chickens with our heads chopped off, and you just don't seem to really get it. That's a you, and that's a put down to in this case, to you, the scheduler, in our little example, and that's not going to help you want to solve this problem. That's going to turn you against me or make you become defensive. A you message is also called a put down message. And when someone is put down, they almost automatically become defensive. When someone becomes defensive, the lines of communication stop. So we're not going to get at what we want, and that's the resolution, the solution, the resolution, as I said. And so we want to turn that around and send what's called an I message. Like, what am I seeing happening? How's it making me feel? What's going on that's making me concerned, about this? And then what's the negative effect? So I might say, team, I have a concern. I have found over the last 2 weeks that we've been running behind schedule for about 3 out of every 4 appointments. Now there's my concrete behavior that's causing me to feel concerned. And so when we do that, it causes the doctor to be further stressed. We're hurrying when we don't need to be hurrying. And patients are being very upset also because they are on such tight schedules these days. So what I'm giving is the concrete negative effect of what's going on, or the behavior, if you will, on me or on the team or on the doctor or on the patients. In this case, it was on all people. It was on the doctor, it was on the team, and it was on the patients. There was that concrete negative effect happening that's causing me to feel that way. So I bring it up like that. And when I do that, most of the time, people are going to be more receptive. So you mentioned identifying the problem. And so I think the first thing that anybody needs to do is to pause and say, here's the most important question I think I've ever learned. I learned it from my mentor, Dr. Thomas Gordon. And it's whether it's in my family, with my husband, with my children, with my team, with my patients, whatever it might be. If I'm upset about something or something's bothering me or just, stressing me, if I pause for a minute, take a breath and say, is what this person doing, or is what the practice is doing, is this situation having a concrete negative effect on me, on my performance or our performance, or on the practice as a whole, or it could be on the patients. Now, in the example I just gave about running behind schedule, if I ask that question, is running behind schedule 3 out of 4 appointments, is that having a concrete negative effect on me as a dental assistant, or on the doctor, or on the patients, or on the practice as a whole? And the answer would be yes. And if the answer is yes, then we own a problem. It's a real problem. And if it's a problem, then again, I'm going back to what I said earlier, we have the right and, in my opinion, the responsibility to bring that up, with the goal being resolution. You're going to probably hear me say those words a lot. I'm not going to bring it up to throw it in somebody's face. I'm going to bring it up because we want to solve the problem. If everyone agrees that, this is going on and this is not good, this is a problem, let's work this out. If we don't, we run the risk of people being at odds with one another. We run the risk of people being antagonistic toward one another. That's when team members start not getting along so well. And that's not happy for anyone.
Well, the more skills we have under our belts, the easier it is for us to navigate. And one of the early modules in D.A.M E, Dental Assisting Made Easy,
Yes.
is a whole module on communication.
Great.
And those I messages, because you're absolutely right. If you do not couch that correctly, they can't hear the
Yes.
problem, because they've
Yes.
already felt the heart racing and the back of the ears burning, because you're getting ready to blame me. So
Exactly.
yes.
And I just want to pat all of you on the back for studying communication skills at the outset of your course. I believe that communication skill is the bottom line to success, whether that's with a business or whether it's with our personal job within the practice, our personal responsibilities, or whether it's with relationships. How we communicate makes all the difference in the world. So good for you for studying that. And I don't know, I think you agree with me, Heather Dawn, that communication skill, the study of communication skills, is probably a lifelong study. And the more we study, the better we get. The better we get at communicating, the better the relationships will be. So good for you.
Communication, the way the message is delivered, is extremely important. But let's say now we're looking at the message being sent and everybody is agreeing that, yes, there is a problem. What are the steps? How should we move through this process of problem solving?
So let's look at the steps of problem solving. I'm going to give you the classic steps of problem solving. And it's just like, let's say that you're doing a composite restoration. Well, you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You've had the magnificent Ross Nash at the Jamaica Dental Association. You've heard him teach composite restoration. You know how he feels. He said, Cathy, he said to me, in composite restoration, there's either excellent or poor, and there's nothing in between. That's a classic quote from Dr. Nash. Well, the same is true with the management systems. You got about 25 major management systems in a dental practice, and then there's a lot of subsystems too. We don't realize that, but we do. Scheduling, reducing broken appointments, no-shows, scheduling finances, sometimes for some practices, insurance management, communication, team building, infection control, hygiene, all of it, going on and on and on. There's so many things we do. Well, problem solving is the same way. So you want to have your system set up and have the steps that you take appropriately. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Administer, everybody being taught very clearly how to administer those steps, and then commitment to do that, to follow up and follow through. And that's the way we need to. And if we leave out steps, it's kind of like the composite restoration. There's either excellent or there's poor. And if any of our management systems, we decide to inadvertently leave out some steps, we're going to have some glitches. Well, problem solving is the same way. It's a system. The first step we've already alluded to, and that is to identify what the problem is in the first place. So let's go back to the assistant bringing up the issue of running behind schedule. First of all, we're going to state the problem, which you heard me do. What is happening? I might even want to focus on some of the things that are working. We're doing these things well, but then what's not working? For at least one out of those 4 appointments, we're scheduling it right on. Seems to be consistently great. We schedule a crown excellently, and we always seem to follow up and follow through nicely with the crown. However, on composite, I'm going to talk about what is working, because we want to solidify anything that's working and working well. We want to pause from time to time and pat ourselves on the back, and I don't mean like be braggadocious, but acknowledge the things that are working well and celebrate that. And so I use the word solidify it, so we keep doing more of that. But then also what's not working. And then we want to look at the why, because most of the time, if you have any system in the practice that's not working, it's going to lead to stress. And as you mentioned earlier, or let me make this point. Stress is not necessarily bad. We can, it can be very exhilarating. And like I said, doing dentistry is stressful. Most all 5 senses, when you're back in the clinical area doing dentistry, all 5 senses are maxed to the hilt. But that's not a bad stress. It can be a very exhilarating stress. It's what you love to do. But when something begins to debilitate a person, either psychologically or physiologically, then it's termed distress. And distress is accountable in about 80% of illnesses being treated throughout the world today. So we want to identify, I'm going to say this very strongly, The first step to stress control, by the way, is kind of like problem solving, is you want to identify what's causing the stress. That's called a stressor, S-T-R-S-S-O-R, stressor. What is causing stress? And then be about the business of solving it. So, are there expectations that are being fulfilled? Are there expectations that are not being fulfilled? First of all, when you're identifying the problem, you want to say, are there any barriers within our organization that are preventing us from finding a solution? Like, what's going on that may be getting in our way? Because if we don't get rid of the barriers, we're going to keep butting our head against the wall, and we're not going to ever find a solution. So we want to identify what is the barrier, or barriers, if you will, and try to either get rid of them or go around them, or at least identify what they are. And remember the question, is what's going on having a concrete negative effect on me, on my performance or anybody's performance, and on the practice as a whole? If the answer to that is yes, you do own a problem, and that's again when we want to dive into it. You might even want to identify the cause of the problem. Is there a cause? Is there something that's going on that's causing this? Because you might want to look at that pretty carefully, because if you don't deal with the cause, you may not be able to work through it. But one of the most important parts about this step, this is only step one, and I will tell you this, step one of problem solving may take longer than anything else: the definition of the problem. And here's the key element. You want to define the needs of each party, or every party. In this example, we want to define the needs of the clinical team. We want to define the needs of the business team. We want to define the needs of the doctor. We want to define the needs of the patients. You've got to define the problem in terms of the needs of each party, or all parties, if you will. Because if you don't, and you come up with a solution that does not meet people's needs, it isn't going to work.
I remember listening to Horst Schulze, and he spoke about really identifying the source of the problem. And he gave a quick example about one of the guests at the Ritz-Carlton complaining that the breakfast was always served late, and they were blaming the kitchen. Well, after they picked it apart, they realized that the number of beddings that was allowed for each room, it was recommended 3. They cut it down to 2 to save. And because those maids had to be going through the rooms and stopping on each floor for a longer period of time, even though the food left the kitchen, the elevator system was so slow that food was delivered late. So they thought the source of the problem was the kitchen, but upon that picking it apart and diagnosing, they realized it had nothing to do with the kitchen at all. So I think identifying the source of the problem is crucial, it's key. And if we stay away from persons and look at what's happening, what the systems are, it will more than likely drill us in more closely, more specifically to what the challenge is.
That's so true. And that's a great example, because it's like wrapping a solution around something that really isn't the problem in the first place. Your example is an excellent example. And so that's oftentimes what we do in our practices, is we jump at, or we throw out a solution and see if it'll splat on the wall and stick. And it doesn't, because it wasn't addressing the real issue anyway. My husband used to say, he said, we had morning huddles, we had weekly team meetings, and then we had a quarterly long, like a consultation meeting with one of the Jameson consultants, not me, but one of the other ladies. And he said, I schedule time with my team to communicate. So we were always on top of things. However, if there was an immediate issue, we would schedule a special time to get together to converse with it. If we're not going to wait, we're going to put something on the calendar to talk about in a month if it's something that's bothering us right now. So that's another important part about problem solving, is what is the immediacy of it? And do we need to pause just a little while to really address this issue before we move on? So that's all a part of step one. And I think the better you do part one, the defining the problem in the first place and according to the needs of the parties, that again, that may take longer than anything else, but that doesn't matter because it's the most important. The second part, the second aspect, or the second step, shall we say, is to generate alternative solutions. Okay, so we talk about the solution, we get clarity about what is the problem, what's going on, is it having a concrete negative effect? What is that concrete negative effect? What are the specific things that are happening according to all parties that are causing problems, and getting those clearly defined, and everybody agree on that. And the second step is to generate alternative solutions. So this is where you brainstorm. Brainstorming means you just throw out all the possible ideas and nobody talks about it. You just throw all the ideas out. Some of the craziest ideas may be some of the best ideas. So throw out all the ideas about ways we can solve that. And it's hard not to jump in and discuss them all and come to a conclusion or give your opinion, but just listen. The more you listen, the more likely everybody in the team, I want everybody to throw out solutions. I want everybody to participate. So it's very important also not to judge or criticize someone's idea. So let's say I throw out an idea and Heather says, "Oh, Cathy, are you kidding me? That is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. We tried that once, don't you remember? That's crazy. Don't even talk about it." So if someone puts down another person's idea, that person's never going to throw out an idea ever again. I'm through. I'm not talking about this anymore. If that's the way my idea is going to be received, then forget it. You can figure it out yourself. That's the way people will respond. So don't do that. Don't do that. You may not like somebody else's idea, but sometimes the craziest ideas are the best ideas. You never know. So be careful, be respectful. Heather, if all the years I've worked with teams and I've talked to teams and analyzed teams and done surveys of teams, and the word that probably, when I say, what do you want most from a team, probably the word that emerges more than any other word is the word respect. Respect. People want to be respected. And that means we respect people's ideas. Just because I listen to your idea or because I respect you for having your idea doesn't mean that I agree with you. It's okay to disagree, but I'm not going to say anything during step while we are throwing out ideas. Then the next step, step 3, is to discuss what are the pros, what are the cons of each idea. And we're not going to leave somebody's out. "Oh, Heather's idea was so crazy, we don't even need to talk about it. We're just going to skip over that." No, we're not going to do that. We're going to discuss the pros and cons, not from a slanderous way. Like, we're not going to put somebody's idea down. "That's crazy. We tried that 3 years ago. That was stupid. It was a crazy, it doesn't work. It'll never work here." No. You also have to be cautious about not using "yeah, but." I call it the "yeah, but" disease. "Yeah, but that won't work here. Yeah, but we're in the city. They're in a rural area. Yeah, but we're in a rural area. They're in a city. Yeah, but we've been practicing 20 years. Yeah, but we've only been practicing one." The yeah, but. The minute somebody starts saying "yeah, but," we close down on the idea that we can come to a solution. That is like a negative. The more positively you can think about something, the more likely you'll be to bring that to fruition. You become what you think about. So when you think about all the reasons something can't work, I promise you it won't. But if you think about ways that can work, you're moving yourself closer to a solution. The fourth step is to then come to a consensus agreement so that everybody can agree on a solution, or sometimes solutions. There might be more than one step. What we really believe we can do that will work for us. And let's have a consensus agreement as a team so we can really all jump in and put ourselves 100% into trying to work this out. It might be that we need some training. So the step 5 is to design a plan of action. And I'm a big fan, as you know, Heather Dawn, of goal setting. And goal setting is really like strategic planning. It's like, okay, what is our goal? Our goal is to stop running behind schedule. Or we could turn that around and have that be positive. Our goal is to run on schedule, or to schedule appropriate so that we run on time. Say that in an affirmative, positive way. What is your goal? Then and write this down. And this all needs to be written down because we're not going to remember it. We want this written down. So have somebody taking notes and be very specific. Then brainstorm all the possible ways that you think we can resolve this scheduling issue. And again, you've come to a consensus agreement. So we're going to design the plan of action. What are we going to do? Step 1, step 2, step 3. Who's going to do what? That's the third part. Who's going to do what? What are the schedulers going to do? What's the doctor going to do? What are the assistants going to do? What are the hygienists going to do? What is everyone going to do? What is each person's role and responsibility in this plan of action we are developing? And then assign a time frame. When are we going to implement this? Tomorrow? Today? Next week? What? Are we going to practice before we do? Again, do some time frames. In your plan of action, assign time frames for each step. We're going to design the plan. Now we're going to practice it. Then we're going to put it into effect next week when the schedule begins to open up, whatever it may be. Assign time frames. And then in our own practice, we would write this out on a form. And Heather, I'm happy to give this form to you and you can pass it out to your teammates and your people in your course. And we would post it on a cork board in our staff lounge and our team lounge. And then every time we had a meeting, or we would always look at this to make sure that we were on course to bring this to fruition. We didn't just write this plan and stick it in a drawer and hope we remembered. We wrote it out, then we paid attention to it. Anybody who had a role or part in a plan of action, they got a copy of that. And you can do this digitally, certainly. You have to follow up and follow through, or you'll get 3 months down the road, you'll think, gosh, we had that great idea about scheduling. And whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to that idea? We went through all that stuff. We were problem solving and we're still running behind schedule. How bad idea. So as you're putting the plan of action into effect, you're implementing the plan, which is step 6. That's critical. Don't just say it. Don't just plan it. Actually do it. And step 7 is to evaluate your progress. And so that's when you check in with each other, check in with the different parties involved, bring out your written sheet that you wrote of your plan of action. How far have we gotten? Are we on task? Are there things that are working well? Well, great. Let's keep doing that. Are there some things that aren't working very well? If some things aren't working very well, don't throw the whole thing out and say, well, forget it. What do we think? Did we think we really could run on schedule? Are we crazy or what? No. You look at the parts of the plan that aren't working and resolve those and make sure that you find a way to correct whatever it was that wasn't working well. If you just commit to that, it's kind of an ongoing process, but it's a living entity. I'll share this with you. This is from my book. It says, a problem approached with a new, fresh, creative mind can be the key to progress. So if we think about that problem solving is really a key, if not the key, to progress. A new idea can become the door to opportunity, growth, and improvement. Look at problems and face them head on. Find solutions. On the other side of a solved problem, you'll find strength, wisdom, and peace. Those are vital elements of creating a healthy work environment. So problem solving can be a real gift that we give and share with one another as a part of the healthy team, as a healthy practice.
I love how you've coined it as a gift that we give to each other. And that's so important to recognize that problems and stress don't necessarily mean bad. A lot of times it means growth and evolving and understanding that success is not defined by everything going great, but success is also defined by recognizing these little glitches, the team coming together and everybody putting in an opinion and working together to get to the next stage. Because if your ideal vision of success is everything running smoothly every day, I think you're being misled.
Yeah, right.
Understanding how to take that challenge and giving everybody in the team permission to come and share about it. Because, one thing, Cathy, I don't want you coming to me with a problem unless you're beginning to think of a solution. It's not a whining party. It's a place where everybody can come and say, well, this is what's going on. This is what I think we need to look at. Because if it's a front desk problem and the front desk people are there all day long, listen to them. They know what they're talking about. They are leaders in that department. So let's listen to them. But also everybody else can say, well, from my point of view, what I'm seeing is X, Y, and Z. And cohesively, we move to the next. And there's nothing more fulfilling than having a team effort when everybody feels, you know, I'm part of that. I made that happen.
And you know, Heather, engagement, the concept of engagement, the processes of engagement in the workplace today is considered by business magnates to be the single most important factor in a thriving business in the 21st century. So engagement means that people are participating, people care, people want to participate. What you just described is a beautiful example of engagement. And the other thing that we can see from research on the people in the workplace today, people want that. People want to come to a place where they are honored, they're respected, their opinions are valued, and they, as you said, and I said earlier too, that they have permission, not just have permission to participate, they're encouraged to participate. And you said that so beautifully. And it's true. And that's how we get people to come to our practices. And that's how we keep them with us. I mean, that's a lot more powerful than, even though money is important, it's not the single most important thing to people in the workplace. It's very important today. You know, we're still in the COVID world, and inflation is high, and COVID is still here. So we do have problems. Wouldn't you agree? There's some problems nobody even imagined. And so there's never been a time probably in our profession or in the universe where problem solving hasn't been more important. We can't do things exactly the same. We're not doing things the same as we were. Dentistry was way ahead of the game because of when we really became more participative in infection control during the AIDS epidemic, and we really upped our infection control. We were way ahead of the game in terms of healthcare professionals, but we've upped our game another time. So again, those are, shall we say, issues. You know, Microsoft took the word problem out of their company's vocabulary, and they just substituted the word issue. And when they have issues, then they're together in the business of having a brainstorm about ways to resolve. And so they don't even use the word problem, they use the word issue. And so we all, as you said, we have issues. We may have issues every day. But if we all put our heads, minds, and hearts together, we can find solutions.
Absolutely. The stress does not have to become distress.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Oh, well, I have learned so much during these few minutes that we have been speaking together. I always end my podcast, Cathy, with a quote. Do you have one that you'd like to share with us today?
I do. And if I may, I'd like to share something again from the chapter of problem solving, the key to progress, from my book, The Creating a Healthy Work Environment. May I just say this about the book also? You can get the book from Amazon, or you can go to www.jamesonmanagement.com, and the book is orderable that way. And so I wrote the chapters in fairly short modules so that it can be the subject of a team meeting. And at the end of every chapter are some questions to discuss, some activities to flow through, so that a team can really absorb the learning, not just read it and put the book back on the shelf, but really integrate. And these are truly the systems of a practice that I believe are imperative to have all of us create and maintain and retain a healthy work environment. So if I may, I'd like to share this quote from the chapter on problem solving. A problem that is left alone becomes a habit, but a problem approached with a new, fresh, creative mindset can open the door for new ideas. New ideas can open the door to brilliance.
Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, dear sister.
I love that. And we have a resource area on our learning platform. And I already have some of your books there, but I am going to add this to yours, to our resource library where people can go and get added information. Cathy, as always, this has been a wealth of information. There's not a time that we speak that I don't learn something new, or I'm reminded of something that I may have put on the back shelf. So thank you. Wow, what an awesome treat listening to Dr. Cathy Jameson speak to us about problem solving. Really, it's essentially finding a healthy solution that brings some form of resolution. And here's some steps that she mentioned: identifying the problem, generating alternative solutions, brainstorming, discussing the pros and cons of the ideas presented, coming to a consensus, designing a plan of action, initiating the plan, and then evaluating the progress. Listen, all this and more can be found in her book, Creating a Healthy Work Environment. You'll find it as a resource on the website for D.A.M.E, Dental Assisting Made Easy. There's so much information that we have to give you. You can't keep it to yourself. So subscribe, share, like, do whatever you need to do, but do not keep it to yourself, because we know that life is better when we live, learn, and grow together.